You're listening to People Are Animals Too, Darn It, with your host, Mandy Evans, Executive Director of Panhandle Animal Shelter.
Hello and welcome to People Are Animals Too, Darn It. Today we're going to do something a little different. I have Joya Blair, our home-to-home manager, joining me. And Joya is a member of my team. She runs our National Home-to-Home program. Welcome, Joya.
Thank you for having me.
Excited to, actually, it's kind of fun.
It is, yeah.
Have a team member. So why don't you tell us about your not your journey, your journey to join our team.
Okay. Well, I actually had heard about Home to Home through the Panhandle Animal Shelter a few years ago, and I thought it was a really cool program. I thought, oh, how come I've never seen anything like this before? How awesome. And there it sat for a while, and then I saw you speak, actually, at a conference and talk more in depth about Home to Home, which is that's where I learned that it was a national program and that it was expanding and growing. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then you went on further to say that you were hiring for the program manager position. And then I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, I've got to have that job. That would be so exciting. And I just loved your energy and what you brought, and just a new way of looking at animal sheltering. So I was just really excited to be on your team and be a part of Home to Home. So here I am now.
Thank you. It kind of sounds like I paid you. Come on and say
I can assure everyone you did not.
So for anybody that's wondering, like, what is Home to Home? I can share a little bit of the background of why we decided to start the Home to Home program. Back in 2015, we started to see an increase in our owner surrenders. And we really wanted to be able to help people, but the capacity to be able to meet the demand was becoming a challenge. So we started to call around and see what other shelters were doing as far as diversion. And really no one had any programs it was all about like managed intake, denying intake, but nobody had a lot of solutions or solutions that we liked that would help the community, so partnering with the community. So we started Home to Home, and what Home to Home is we have a website that's home-to-home.org or home-home.org, where community members were able to post their pets for rehoming. And it would link to our social media where we could then share those posts to everyone that was on our Facebook page. So we were able to help our community rehome pets without these pets having to actually come into the shelter. A few months after we launched the program in 2016, we saw a 30% reduction in our owner surrenders and thought, holy cow, this is amazing. And not only that, but people loved it. Like the feedback, I know I can own that as the leader, I had a lot of fear around sending the message to the community that we supported people in rehoming. I mean, that was like big no-no. You don't support people who are rehoming. And that's not what we got back. We got a ton of people that were really excited and what a great idea, helping people. This is really great. Let's keep animals out of shelters. So we were able to write a grant and we launched Home to Home nationally. We actually did kind of a beta with 2 shelters and ourselves for a year, and then we launched nationally in 18. And that's where we are. That's kind of what it is. But you might be able to give a little more detail on really what it is and how the national works. Like the national is a little different than our experience.
Yeah. So we're actually now currently active in 16 shelters across the U.S. Within 13 states. So we're getting a pretty good reach, which is awesome. We have lots and lots of shelters reaching out to us all the time, connecting with them, wanting to know more about Home to Home. So to answer your question a little bit more about what it is, how it works, basically, when a shelter is looking into options that they can help really kind of deepen their offerings to their community, Home to Home is one of those perfect perfect solutions to help offer an alternative to surrender. So if someone comes into their shelter and they're saying, gosh, I really love my pet Sparky, but gosh, we're moving across country and we can't take him, that's a great opportunity for them to say, oh gosh, I'm sorry about your situation. Maybe what we could try to do is put your pet on home to home and see if you might be able to rehome it before your move. And then, it just has this really nice outcome of that person gets to reach prospective people who are interested in adopting their animal. They talk, they connect, they come and meet the dog. And the owner that's currently with that pet, they get to decide where that animal goes. And it really puts the power back in their hands, and it makes them feel good to know that they get the choice of where their animal's going. They get the choice of knowing exactly who that is, and the new owners get the wonderful benefit of learning everything about that pet firsthand from the previous owner, which that doesn't happen so often. So it's really a nice win-win, and that's just on the side of the people part of it, right? Like the pet gets the benefit of not having to go from into a shelter situation, which of course we're part of the sheltering world. We know we're good people. We're doing our very best, but it's still a stressful environment. Yeah. And so how nice is it when a pet doesn't have to go through that? So that's kind of the premise. And when shelters adopt home to home, they have their own program. So what that means is that it's branded to their organization. And so they really get to take ownership in their home-to-home program, and they can offer people this solution even when they don't have another option to offer them at that point in time, because as many in animal welfare know, sometimes those intakes, there's waiting lists. They can't take their animal right then and there. Yeah. And so this offers another alternative. And to your point, you said that you were afraid to bring this up because starting home to home, because people don't support rehoming. Like it looks bad for a shelter to propose that as a solution, when really no, we need to flip the switch and look at this in a different way. Like, this is just another way that shelters can help their community. It doesn't mean it's in place of. It's an addition, and it makes everything that much richer.
Yeah. I think that's something that we all need to be looking at in sheltering is, what are we really here for? Yeah. I mean, are we really here to have animals in cages? Yeah. No. And we can't be doing this work alone. And I think for a long, long time, we've tried to do it on our own. And there's a community of people who love animals, and they all want to help. And that's the other thing that we've found is the people who use home to home, the owners that list their pets, these are people who are amazing.
Yes.
And they care. It's not easy. I mean, they have to go. It's far easier to just take the dog, the cat. Yeah. Home to home serves any animal that is legal. So we've had savanna cats and parakeets and tarantulas
and
all
a horse.
rehomed. But it's an opportunity for this owner that they know they have to make this decision, which 99% of the time is for the pet.
Yes. And to your point, we get so many, when people respond back to home and saying, please remove my pet, it's been adopted, they have the option to write a note when they set that submission in. And we see so much positive, heartfelt thanks for what we're doing at home to home, which of course feels great, but it's just it's so good to know that, like, yes, this is what people need, this is working, and yes, they're in a difficult situation, and that's where we need to have some compassion, is that we don't understand all the time what someone might be going through, and we don't need to judge someone for having to rehome their pet. Let's support and let's help. Let's find the solution and not focus on the problem. And that's really where we can make a change in animal welfare.
No, I agree. I think it's obviously, I think it's a great program.
You would, since you started it.
It would be really silly of me. But I have to. I mean, I try on this podcast, I think, to really own some level of vulnerability. And One of the things that's been really hard for me, and I think of anybody that's had some idea that they feel is like, oh, this is great, you know, and the man or woman that invented the can opener, you know, may have gone through the exact same feelings I've gone through. I don't know,
because there are pain points, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, and it's been our biggest struggle, I think, within animal welfare has been communicating why home to home is different. And it's been stressful, and I will own the fact that I have cried some pretty significant tears because I want people to know, like, it is different. And so I'm gonna do my best to see if I can kind of describe that. There are so ours started in like that concept of idea in 15, and then we launched our version in 16. And then when we went to Expo in 18, there were 2 other rehoming sites, which, you know, is great. And I think that competition challenges people to be better.
Yes.
And in some ways, it's weird to say that it's competition because it's all helping the greater good.
Yes.
And so when I talk about it, it's more in the idea that I'm trying to explain what's different about it. And there are things about ours that I think are better, but that is up to each shelter and what they use and determine. I think everyone should use some tool that helps their community empower themselves to help. So with Home to Home, it's the shelter's tool. So if it's similar in a way, I guess, to Facebook, because we provide each shelter with their own Home to Home website. So they have their own URL link. The branding on the Home to Home site is theirs. Their donate buttons theirs. But it's also integrated into their social media. So what's different is that we're providing a platform where shelters are leveraging their community to participate in this. It's national, but it's regionally national, which is hard to explain. The other platforms that are out there are taking an approach that we chose not to. Very specifically, they charge adoption fees, and it's a revenue generating way for them. But also, our site, we don't allow adoption fees because we don't want people selling their animals. And then on the other sites, they give the community support in how they should value their pet. And I don't agree with that either, because I don't think that we should be promoting that a specific breed or has more value than another. And it's interesting because we're in sheltering. Like, our job is to serve all animals, and so many people in sheltering have a cow over breeding, but yet we will put a value on a breed. So, and then they use some fear language around supporting those adoption fees. Like, if you don't charge, then your animal's going to be sold to a batcher. And anyone that listens to the podcast and keeps listening will learn very quickly that we do not believe in fear-based language. We don't believe in policies and procedures that only apply to the 1% that might do something wrong. They hurt the 99% that don't do anything wrong. But the really key factor, the big thing that's hard to describe on what's different with Home to Home is it is a relationship tool. And if shelters want to use, and so when I wrote my grant for this, I had to argue that shelters wanted to be involved, that they wanted to do more work. And for a lot of people, that's like, really? But the other ones are transactional based. So it's, I can't help you, try them. Where ours is, I can't help you in this way right now. But in the interim, we have this great program called Home to Home, and you can post your animal on the website. We'll promote it for you, and we'll help you throughout the process. If your animal's not spayed and neutered, if that particular participating shelter has the resources, why don't we help you with that?
Exactly. It provides those touch points for them to connect with outside of people inside just the shelter. which I just really love that it provides that opportunity to extend other options to people that might not otherwise. Exactly.
Other than saying I can't.
Yeah.
And we've been guilty of this. I had a consultant come in and to do a review of our organization. This was a while back, and she said, do you realize that we had a really long cat wait list? Mm-hmm. And she said, do you realize that the first response of your front desk when they see a cat is they just say, I'm sorry, we can't take your cat in. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, geez, that's not good. Mm-hmm. And if you said, I can't take your cat in right now, but I can help you in this way, would you be willing to do it? It's just different. It provides a different relationship. And I believe that sheltering should be more of a community collaboration model where we are partnering with our community, where we're one and we're all in this together. It's not us and them.
Right.
How do we empower our community members to be a part of the solution?
Yes. Well, I mean, that's obviously definitely like where your leadership is taking the shelter and home to home. And where do you see this going, like, in the future, like how this could change things?
I don't know. I'm really, I think that the biggest piece that I've learned is that what we're doing isn't just about home to home.
Right.
It's kind of bigger than that. It's looking at shelters embracing the idea that no community member is better than the other. So not diversifying like donors, we're going to treat them this way, but adopters are going to be treated a little less than a donor. And if you're surrendering, you're like bottom of the barrel. Like just saying,
because it definitely can be tiered that way in organizations right now, isn't it? Yeah,
just being kind to people, and realizing that everybody, for the most part, has good intentions and honoring those. So I'm hoping that this kind of model of being nice and understanding people, I mean, the whole reason we have this podcast is to kind of bring that awareness. Home to home is a tool for that. So we've talked about this, that it isn't easy.
No.
Right? I mean,
it is and it isn't. Yeah. And it just depends on how you're looking at that. I mean, I guess you want to finish?
No, go ahead. I'm curious because I know that Joya has the opportunity right now to talk to shelters all over the nation and multiple times a week. So you're really hitting the front lines right now. So what is kind of the feel that you're getting?
Well, gosh, I guess if you were to kind of really kind of sum things up into the basic categories, you see, I feel like it usually boils down to one of two scenarios. The first one, the shelter is that I might be speaking with. They're very receptive and looking for ways to change the organization. They're very community minded, and they're looking for different solutions to really help their community. And kind of thinking outside the box, and they're willing to look at things in new and different ways. And I feel like home to home is something it's a little new and different in the way that our approach is, kind of what we talked on earlier. Or it might be another track of a shelter that's really overtaxed, really overworked, and they're kind of drowning in the sense that they're overwhelmed with things that are happening with intake and otherwise, and it feels kind of scary to them to offer up something like home to home, because it feels like it's out of their control, and they're afraid to really open up and look at things in a new and different way, because they've definitely kind of like gone down the track of like what they do and what they don't do, and that's just the way it is. And really, like, we're asking, like, oh no, we're asking you to look at this in a new and different way, of not necessarily that everyone coming in to surrender their pet is a bad person, but like, how can we help them through their situation, because it's probably a really difficult time for them. And so it's we kind of go down both of those tracks, and for some shelters it's the perfect fit, and for some it's not, and that's totally okay. We're just really looking to partner with those shelters who understand and get us, if I may be so frank.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're going to help bring this change to the world that we want to see. And bit by bit, we're doing it. And we want to support all shelters. We want to be in every shelter, but we just know it's going to take some time and change in the thinking and the model to really get there. And that takes place with these kind of conversations we're having right now, and with time and change.
Yeah. Okay, this might be unpopular. I'm going to say it anyways. I don't think that there's anything. I think that the important, when I say this, to remember that I believe that everybody has their best intentions at heart. Like they really, people that are overwhelmed in an overwhelming situation, I have been there, and it doesn't feel good.
No.
And it can feel like you're literally drowning. And it's, maybe you have an outbreak, maybe you have staff leaving. But at some point, that spiraling out has to be stopped, right?
Yeah.
And what I see is that people who own their vulnerabilities, that say, and they're having those conversations, and they're saying, I don't have enough staff, I have illness, when people own their vulnerability, it provides them an opportunity to grow.
Yes.
Those people that look for solutions, those are leaders, because they're taking an organization and they are leading it somewhere. The people who are in leadership positions that don't own their vulnerabilities, who won't seek assistance, and let me tell you that I know why they're not, because in animal welfare, we get attacked for doing the right thing often. And that becomes really scary. And so people will just end up cocooning, like we are just going to survive, and we can't tell anyone what we're doing wrong or any of our vulnerabilities, because it will just lead to more attacks. And that's why I'm not a fan of, any kind of action that's divisive in any way. But the people who are just barely surviving, there's so much fear, and they don't want to talk about their vulnerabilities, and the fear is holding them back, and it actually perpetuates their fear. Like the fear equals the outcome they're scared of, and kind of lets people spiral backwards. Those people aren't leaders. They're managers. They're literally managing the situation that they're in. And that is it's a really difficult situation. There are so many resources in animal welfare right now that are here to help. And I would just, if anybody is watching this or listening and relates to that idea of, you're just spiraling in the same environment, I'm open for phone calls, anything, to be able to talk about and point you in the direction of resources. We actually just took a trip, I won't say where, but to a shelter that every time, and we weren't doing it as a consulting, like we were just there visiting, so we weren't in any place to give any sort of advice, and we're not perfect. I mean, I can go through, we've got some serious things that we're trying to address right now, but this particular leader kept saying all the reasons why that wouldn't work in their community. And I said, because I couldn't help myself, so you're saying that your community is different than every other community in the United States that are doing these programs and it's working. That's the kind of fearful leadership that we hope that even through this podcast and through really anything we can work through and help. Scarcity mindset. We hear that. I don't have enough resources. I'm not sure. And I just want to touch on it because one of the brilliant things about having any type of program that is community-based and not in the shelter is it does take some work up front. But because you're supporting your community, you're providing them with resources, eventually, and it may not be right away, they don't need you as much. And the more and the friendlier we are with our community, all of a sudden we develop this environment where they're not scared of us, and that increases our influence. If I said to you, you know what, I don't like you and I think you're a bad person, am I gonna be able to influence you?
Probably not go over so well.
Your wall has gone up, right? And so now, when you see somebody that has on, I don't know, I'm thinking of a hot topic, what are those collars called? The prong collar. and you walk up to them and you say, what are you doing with the prong collar? Don't you know the studies show blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It does not lead to the outcome that you're
hoping for, yes.
By providing like a fear-free environment.
Yeah.
So that scarcity mindset, you have to break through that and say, man, if we dedicate a little bit of time here, that will free up other resources.
Yeah.
And you were talking to a shelter this morning that was kind of addressing this.
Yeah, I mean, and some of the struggles she was talking about are, it could be applied to so many different shelters, but she said that they're working on making changes, and it's been a slow road, but they're getting there. And she talked about some of her strides, but she also talked about some of the struggles. And one that comes to mind is that she said they have about an 80% surrender rate right now. Strays. Yes, excuse me. So that can always tell us a couple of things, right? Like there's our strays, sure. But at that high rate, it's probably some owner surrenders in there too, and people just not feeling comfortable enough to say that they need to surrender their pet. And so that's kind of where that fear comes in that we talk about, is like people afraid of us. And we want to be that resource that people can come to and feel comfortable and have an open and honest conversation. And if we're not creating that environment, how is that ever going to happen? So that's kind of, where Home to Home has that is its, overall feeling behind it. And so we want to bring that to other shelters. And that's where we're coming from to make that change.
Well, and the Home to Home, one of the steps is you have to trust your community.
Mm-hmm. And even that's a big ask for a lot of people. It really is.
Yeah.
There's one shelter I talked to the other day that said, we've just been in the business of denying everyone. And they had a shelter full of animals, and no one was good enough to adopt, even a board member on their own, shelter. And it's just we need to look at this in a different way, and we need to support.
Yeah. Like, why are we doing this?
Yes.
What's the core of why we're doing it?
Yeah.
It isn't to police people.
No.
I think we kind of miss that.
Yeah.
That it's what's the best interest of the animal.
And to your point, a question that we get often is, oh, well, how do you know that animal's going to a good home? And I mean, my response to that is really, well, how do we know that any of our animals that we put out to the shelter are going to a good home? And we ask the right questions. We go through the steps, but we'll never really truly know. We're not going to go and do a site visit to that animal's home. So we used to. Yeah. Well, and that's probably where you're more forward thinking now, is like, just we're going now where we, more often than not, people are good.
Yeah.
And it's those scary situations that you hear about that really grab the headlines, that make us afraid and make us think that, like, oh gosh, that could happen. That's going to be the outcome every time. And the fact is, it's just not.
Yeah.
And we need to move through that. Yeah.
Well, and I think that I know I'm using like these hot button words, but I think it's a little arrogant of us to think that we're doing a better job than the owner would do.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, all we're doing is bringing them into a building and asking them questions. We're not actually seeing the person, like the true interactions outside of the shelter environment with these. And some of them do meet people at their house if that's something they're comfortable with. So it is a little arrogant of us, and the arrogance is not intentional.
We're coming from a good place, of course. But who are we to be the better decision makers than the owner of the pet? So, and that's, that can be a hard thing to invite people to think about it and look in that way, because it's not the norm. It's just really not.
So Home to Home, right now, we have been funded by Maddie's Fund, which, let me tell you, was like the best gift. I cried, like hyperventilated. When we received their support. And we're going to be expanding, hopefully, into a better platform. One of the struggles we have right now is the platform isn't ideal for large community shelters. So, Dallas and Seattle, some of the bigger shelters.
Really high volume populations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're trying to adapt so that we can move more into that realm. The exciting thing for me, and I get a kick out of it, is hearing the shelters that are part of the Home to Home program. And it's so validating because they come back and they tell us these beautiful stories that they really would never have known.
Exactly.
If they hadn't taken the time to work with their community.
Yes.
Do you have any story?
I mean, just thinking, more often than not, the messaging that we get back is the response has been overwhelmingly positive, and that, of course, is very, like you said, validating to hear. And usually, it's just the gratefulness for having a tool like this. Like, thank you for offering this service. This is exactly what I was looking for, but I didn't know it existed. Just the fact that they get to see where their animal is going, and they get to meet the family, and they get to have those honest conversations with those prospective adopters, and really make that decision. Like, that is so empowering to them, and it makes them feel so good about their decision that they know where their animal's going, and it's just they're just really appreciative. And there's just so many people that write in and say, like, oh, I'm so glad that little Billy can now go and now he can go and run and play with this really active family, because I was wheelchair bound, and now I haven't been able to take him for a walk in so long, and now he's living with this great family and these kids, and he's running around and having the time of his life. And like, these owners are giving the best gift they can to their animals by finding them a new home that fits the pet better. And it's really kind of putting the pet first, like, because it's with the best intentions for that pet. And they're coming out ahead because they're getting to go to a place, a new home that's the right for them, because that owner gets to decide, and they know their animal best. They just do.
I think that's kind of definitely a common theme of rehoming. And it's touching, because we really for so long have shamed people for doing it. But you hear, like, there was a story about this elderly couple. And someone had given them a dog, and it was a Springer Spaniel. And this dog had so much energy, it kept knocking them over and hurting them. And all they wanted, they put him on Home to Home. And then they were like, we can't do this. But there'd already been somebody. And so we knew the people, so we called them and said, really, this would be, the dog loves to swim. This woman is a swimmer. Her son is a swimmer. She's a runner. And it ends up being this perfect match. And so though it was really hard for them to give up on the dog, they know now that it's in this perfect home and a good match. So it does make a good.
It is. It's so great. Like, I just remembered a cat on Home to Home, and a cat named Cat Stevens. And they were so happy because they found a new home for Cat Stevens, where, she could be the solo cat because she just was not having it with other cats. And then they just found the perfect match with this lady who was looking for that companion, and that she, that was going to be her only pet, and it was the right fit. And, it's so cool to read those stories and hear that, like, this is working, and everyone is just having a really positive outcome. It's why I'm doing this. It's why I'm here, and I just love it.
Awesome. There's a lot of power in stories. These stories are, as shelters, we use them to market our services. We also use them to help donors realize their impact. And with Home to Home, these are these shelters' stories, right? And they have access to them. They're part of the story. I think that's a really nice part of the program, and also that they get to track data. And for anyone that's watching or listening that is not in the animal sheltering world, what we're seeing is that this whole community resource center movement around sheltering, which basically is shelters are trying to create programs that are in the community that help animals not have to come into a shelter. So those would be food banks, low-income programs, helplines, medical care, all of that. And all of those programs represent data around animals helped. So for our shelter, we used to help around 1,200 animals a year. And this last year, we helped 2,800 in our building, but overall, we helped 8,800 animals. So that impact of being able to be in the community has a ripple effect. And it is considered important, not just to our donors to know the impact, but also in grant making and just telling the overall story. So tracking that data is great. So I had mentioned before that we were looking at doing, we have to increase our platform. We have to change. And we are going to be launching a crowdfunding site. The link and information will be on this podcast. The crowdfunding is primarily to increase the platform's ability to help larger shelters. Right now, it's tied directly into each organization's social media. What that means that any animals in that shelters that has been approved by that shelter post to their social media. So they're not getting the whole network throughout the nation, just theirs. And that really helps these animals receive the attention they need to be rehomed. But when you have a really large shelter, that's a lot of social media posts. So we need to be able to promote these animals on their website and really maybe just do a weekly post on Facebook. And that kind of advancement, we need to rebuild the site. And so our crowdfunding is going to be for $150,000. I'm really excited about it because I think it's an opportunity to kind of share the message of what Home to Home is about. But we need everyone's support, and the support can be as little as $1 and as much. Sky's the limit. If you want to give 150, go for it. But the purpose is really to get this in as many shelters as possible, with the idea that the success rate we've seen on the reduction in owner surrenders to shelters, if you use that on national numbers, 2 million pets would not go into shelters simply by empowering communities to help themselves. That is huge. And I mean, it could wipe out euthanasia of treatable, healthy animals. We really want to see this get in every shelter possible in the country. And so any support that we can get, we would sincerely appreciate.
Yeah.
And then for any shelters that are watching, or shelter staff, and you're like, this sounds like a cool program, Joya, how would they get more information?
They would go to home-home.org.
Okay.
And there they would go under the For Shelters section, and they would hit the Join Now button, and they would just fill in the information about their shelter and who they are. That will come to me, and I will reach out to them, and then I contact them, and we have a call, and we get to talk further and walk through all the steps of how to sign up and become part of the program.
Thank you for listening. We'll put some links attached to this podcast so that you can just click a link, and it will take you right to where Joya said, and then also for our crowdfunding. We appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to People Are Animals Too, Darn It. You can send your questions or feedback to mandy@peopleareanimals2.com. MANDY@peopleareanimals2.com.